Youngins used to guy.
Yeah, really. Even if I had dinner if it went that late, I'd see it.
Hanging in there.
Have you seen the?
Yeah. Oh man, we got all of our ingredients for Thanksgiving.
Do you really?
We got all of our shopping done for Christmas.
I was just talking to somebody today or yesterday, and something about Thanksgiving, and they were like, well, you know, it's next Thursday. We had such like a busy October.
Yeah, I'll wait a couple of years.
We went up to Virginia for a wedding, and the fiance was one of the bridesmaids, so it was
Why
like,
not?
That's kind of cool.
Try. I gave that a try.
she's good at it. She's a
I know.
Jersey from my
I
niece's
know. You got a little
thing
fashion
there, and
still.
then we went up to Virginia, so
A horse and carriage ready for me to
now it's
fall
like,
into
okay,
if
we
I
got a
need
chance to
to.
catch up.
I thought about just
Oh,
watching.
Thanksgiving is next week.
Yeah, I got it early.
I kind of wanted to do something different.
What you doing with cheer?
Exclusive little different thing, whatever. I can't come up with it. Let me put up. Let me find your horse and carriage.
Yeah, I got to work Wednesday night, and then I got
I
to
had
work
one that was similar.
Saturday.
The competitor, it was called, describe it. Now, you can just buy like it's an EMR pen. It's made by Stedman. Let me see what he got. Well, you know they're going to be in the, they're going to be a race Saturday in Raleigh. Apparently it's made by yeah, so I don't know. I have it, I don't even know. It was like, I just found it. That's good. So we don't always say the same thing. It's not always true. With the car like
I have one by Amazon.
you got a car like
It's a mount. Apparently it's
Don't worry, you know, it's just a great job. Yeah.
those Koreans.
I know it's weird that we have to figure out our own.
You could have got a float. You should have.
We're just putting them together for ourselves, you know?
But it's $6.50 for the price. We don't chase last time they had about 5 of them in it. 0. They didn't have a red pen.
Well, I used to be, because of my office in real estate was down in Garner. And I was a member of Garner.
Yeah, for now on.
Meeting to order, public hearing meeting, November 14th, 2022. First, we will have approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor? We're open to public hearing. Request for conditional rezoning at 401 West Gannon. I declare the public hearing open and ask for staff presentation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, members of the planning board. The one item before you tonight for joint public hearing is a conditional zoning request. Conditional zoning requests need to meet the standards of section 2.2.6K of the UDO. These standards include that it has to meet the health, safety, and welfare of the community and the general public, that it is appropriate for the location and context in which the proposed request is set, that the request is reasonable in the public interest, for that the applicant provides a concept plan consistent with the regulations of the Unified Development Ordinance, or they provide requested deviations from the ordinance, and then other relevant factors that the board finds pertinent to the request. The request tonight is CZ 23-01. It is a conditional zoning request, which means that they're able to ask for modifications or apply conditions, whereas a straight rezoning, it's all or nothing type of scenario. The applicant is proposing to rezone this from office and institutional to downtown periphery conditional. Within your packets tonight, you should receive an attachment that shows all of the uses that are currently permitted within the office and institutional district. Please note that the applicant is proposing to reduce that list to no more than 11 dwelling units. It is coming in as a multifamily residential, which would mean that the site would be under unified control. The applicant has shown interest in possibly creating site condos from these individual units, but for development purposes, it would be recognized as a multifamily residential. As I noted, the applicant is proposing 12 dwelling units. The property at 401 West Gannon is located at the corner of Gannon and Rotary. It is the parcel that's shown on the screen. It is owned by Meridian Properties, and they are also the applicant before you tonight. The site is currently vacant, and they are proposing a multifamily residential structures. As I noted, the current zoning is office and institutional, and they're requesting to change that to downtown periphery conditional. It was noticed in accordance with our local standards that were in place at the time of application, which included a public hearing sign on the property, which included both frontages of the property. Mailed notice, because of when this application was submitted, it was sent out to all the property owners within 150 feet of the outer boundaries of the subject parcel. It was put in a paper of general circulation, specifically the Wake Weekly, 2 times before the hearing. In addition to those standards, it was posted on the town's website under public hearing information, and email notification was sent out to the planning department's notification list. We did receive a question, and there was a revised notice that went out with a proper link. To better orient you to the site is located at Rotary in Gannon. This is West Gannon with the Wedgwood Shopping Center located here. Downtown is located in this area here. McLean's is located here. Everybody I think knows where McLean's is. As I noted, the property is currently zoned office and institutional, as is the adjacent property that contains a single-family residential structure located here. The parcels to the north as well as to the south are zoned R4 residential neighborhood, which is a medium to high residential classification. The green zoning is downtown periphery, and then the red zoning parcel over is zoned HC heavy commercial. So as you can see, this is a transition area between heavy commercial, residential, and our downtown districts. And our future land use classification calls for this area to be general commercial with residential north and south, and then the downtown mixed use in the pink color. The rezoning tonight the rezoning, if approved, would result in this map being modified as well, where the future land use here would be urban downtown mixed use. So specifics about the proposed request, it is multifamily dwelling units that would be structured to look more like townhomes. The applicant did indicate that there's going to be 11 units. As I noted, townhome style structures. And the applicant is proposing a 30-foot type C buffer, which would run along the adjacent parcels in these areas. A type C buffer is a semi-opaque, where it's not going to be completely blocking the view of the adjacent properties, the adjacent residential uses, but it's going to be far more substantial than a lot of our other buffers, with the exception of the type D. The type D is the only thing that is more intensive and more opaque than our type C. They're also going to preserve the corner for open space where there is a large tree, and we'll show that in a moment. The initial proposed elevations are shown here. The applicant has provided some revised elevations as well for consideration, and we'll go through those here in a little bit. These would be the backs of the structures. As you can see, the structures along the streets would have the direct pedestrian access from the sidewalks, something more in keeping with what you'd see in more urbanized settings. And then the vehicles would be accessing the structures from the back. The size of the structures would have the base foundation course, and the materials would be complementary to the fronts and the backs of the structures. And then for the revised elevations that were provided, They look like this. They do still maintain the three-story characteristic. These would be the structures that would be located internally to the site, which are the front-loaded structures. But instead of the flat appearance roofs, they did provide a more traditional pitched roof.
Just ask one quick question.
Sure.
Would be the ones that are facing internally?
These would be the internal plan. These structures.
There'd just be three, even though the picture shows six. Okay.
Them are front, or the rest of them are rear accessed.
No, I'm talking about
Majority of the structures would look something like that.
Right. Gotcha.
this one. Do we not have that slide?
The applicant provided these tonight.
Okay, thanks.
The applicant does have paper handouts for everybody for consideration as well.
Okay, thank you.
Up here. The applicant is proposing several conditions, primarily in terms of the architectural details, in terms of the garage widths, specific architectural conditions, which would still have to be reviewed in context of the modified architectural designs, building articulation, as well as the deviation from the height request. Things to consider as you're reviewing this application tonight is this is a new product type. This is not something, even the revised is not something that is typically found elsewhere within the town of Zebulon. But it is representative of architectural features at this time. This is an example of townhomes that are being constructed over in Wendell. There's similar structures being constructed in Knightdale, in Wake Forest, Gardner, Clayton, Apex, Cary. This is representative of this time. And at one point, the homes that are in the Wakeland Heights, the one-story ranch homes, were not characteristic of what Zebulon was. At one point, the homes in Whitley Manor were not considered characteristic of what Zebulon was. Even not too long ago, the homes that are being constructed in Weaver's Pond were not characteristic of what Zebulon was. But it is a different architectural type that is in high demand right now within the Triangle region. The increased density as well provides for additional residential options. This is important to take in consideration because it reduces the need on services, specifically trash, fire, police. Because these are concentrated, these services do not travel as far. Same thing for utilities, water and sewer. Those all have to be maintained. By allowing for higher density in appropriate locations, it really reduces the cost to either the town or the city of Raleigh or whoever owns particular infrastructure elements. It creates pedestrian site design, having these structures front on the streets as opposed to driveways really encourages for nearby residential redevelopment as well as commercial redevelopment. Suddenly you have a pedestrian factor where the person becomes the most important element as opposed to the vehicle. They're providing for open space preservation. This is a picture of the large tree that the applicants are really wishing to preserve on the site. And as part of that, preserving the corner location. And location might be the most significant. As I noted, higher density in particular locations is important. Based on review, it would be an 11-minute walk to the core of our downtown. That is one thing, but even more so, it's even be shorter to the Wedgwood Shopping Center. Increased density in terms of residential nearby and improved architectural elements hopefully will lead to more substantial incomes, then results in redevelopment of places like the Wedgwood Shopping Center. So the standards, once again, are 2.2.6K, which is health, safety, and welfare for the first one. And it's worth noting that this is a residential product adjacent to other residential products. In fact, the development across the street of Rotary Drive is also a multifamily residential structure that was constructed to look like multiple townhomes. That is one parcel that contains several dwelling units. Appropriate for the location. As I noted, this is a transition location in between commercial and residential. The increased density contributes to the potential redevelopment of the Wedgwood area, as well as is walkable to the core of our downtown. It's reasonable in the public interest. The applicant has provided a site plan that is consistent with the regulations found in the Unified Development Ordinance. And then the board can determine if there's other relevant factors that should be taken into consideration as part of this request. The other element is in terms of additional residential development in close proximity to downtown, which is an additional relevant factor, is the supply and demand. Right now, we have an unprecedented demand for residential homes within Wake County. Nothing that we do is going to change that demand. However, if there is inadequate supply, that results in developers purchasing existing housing stock that is lower priced, clearing the site and building new residential homes in those particular locations, displacing the residents that are already there. By allowing for additional residential opportunities, that reduces that situation. So staff recommends accepting public comment and referring the matter to the planning board for recommendation. I'm available if you have any questions. Additionally, the applicants are present tonight, and I believe they have a couple words to say as well.
Thank you, Mike, for that. Looking at or listening to what you just said and understanding the supply and demand and, the increase in demand for homes, is there a demand for this type of housing? Are you all aware of any type of data or numbers for this particular type of housing for this area?
Yes, it's actually increasing pretty substantially, primarily with recent empty nesters, as well as recent college graduates that don't want the same burden of buying a single-family residential home with a large lot or anything like that, where they can move into a place where the grounds and the maintenance are being taken care of for them. As a comparison, the nearby communities that have these type of products, where it is a townhome style, multi-story structure, they're selling at record paces to the point where some of the costs for the more elevated models with marble and cultured stone and all those are going upwards of $600,000 to $700,000. The base ones over in Wendell, along Wendell Boulevard, Wendell Falls Parkway, as you're going into town, are closer to $200,000. But as soon as they began construction, there was very high demand for folks to move in.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Commissioner?
Yeah, a comment and then a question.
Sure.
The 11-minute walk downtown would be a nice stroll, especially if we can get some painted crosswalks. My concern is, how would they get across Gannon to go to Wedgwood, especially with the busy intersection at Mac Todd and Gannon, which we have an angular intersection there, plus traffic going left and right constantly?
That is a great question. Part of the comprehensive land use plan looks at the redevelopment of the Gannon and Mac Todd intersection and calls for, in that particular location, I believe it also calls for a roundabout that'd be similar to the one that is currently under review by NCDOT at Pony Road and Mac Todd.
That may handle the traffic. What about pedestrians getting across Gannon?
All of those are taken pedestrian in consideration, with the one at Pony Road is going to have stamped crosswalks, full ADA compliance, and then tying in sidewalks for a short distance each direction. And as each of these sites become redeveloped, they will have to put in sidewalks along there, or the town can always either submit for grant requests or find some sort of funding sources to provide those.
I assume they would have the walk, don't walk signage with maybe pedestrian activated?
I don't know about the pedestrian activated, but I do know that there's going to be pedestrian indicators located at that location.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miles?
So I understand, first of all, piggyback off what Commissioner Laus just said, so that it'll be up to the town to find funding for this? Is that what I take for your conversation?
For additional sidewalks that are off-site of this location, that's correct. Is not part of the development, so the town would be responsible for any improvements that we wish to proceed with for that.
Quick question. I know we have a light at Wakefield and Gannon. That intersection was really bad there. How
Yes.
would that, I know they weren't, they didn't have to do a traffic analysis. So how would that affect that group getting onto Gannon right there? Because I know that was a real bad intersection we had for a while at Wakefield and Gannon right there. So how can we address that? Will that be an issue, you think?
With 11 homes and the access drive off of Rotary Drive, I do not believe it would be a substantial modification or issue. Namely, the traffic patterns are probably not going to have them turning onto Wakefield. I'm just looking at the map. The majority of the traffic patterns are going to be continuing on Gannon in one direction or the other. But with only 11 dwelling units, the increase in traffic is going to be minimal at best.
And one last question from me as far as height-wise. Can you give me an example why we should make an exception for this height? You would, please?
It goes back to the architectural, let me bring that up. Specifically in this context, it has the garage on the first floor, and it provides 2 floors of living space. This reduces the amount of impervious surface located outside. Furthermore, you can see that it's a single lane width driveway. So it still provides for 2 vehicles while minimizing the impervious surface on the site.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned that nothing we do is going to meet the demand for housing. I mean, while I think eventually that's true, but we do have to take into consideration that we have a very large number of houses that haven't even broken ground yet. And I am a little bit concerned about the overall aesthetic that we have here. I want to make sure that it looks like it belongs, and I don't really care about Wendell Falls. Please let the record show that I don't care what they do in Wendell. I don't care what they do in Cary or Apex. I care what happens here, and that it's right for our community here. And putting up a bunch of super modern houses that are outside of what the rest of this area looks like is incongruous to what I believe we're trying to achieve as our town of friendly people.
Question?
It wasn't, it was a statement.
Okay.
Commissioner Miles?
I kind of like to pick back up what Commissioner Shannon just said. In speaking to some of the residents, that was one of the biggest things that they were worried about. That I know what Zebulon Preservation Zebulon just went through to get the historic district set up, and then they're saying, okay, now we're going to come in and put these modern homes right in there. They couldn't really rationalize that and trying to figure out how we're going to make that kind of like really look like it blends in. I know we do have those apartments right there inside that area, but what you're looking to put here is totally modern. And like I said, I spoke to some of the Preservation Zebulon people trying to get their input. And like I said, some were kind of neutral, but there was some concern there, how that's going to look in that historic area there. Once again, it's just a statement, just bringing it to attention.
Okay. Well, one question I do have is, what would you tell those folks that do want to live in a building like this? Would you want to tell them that they're not welcome in Zebulon?
No, not about not welcome. I like to take care of what's here first, what we have. Right now, you said you're going to answer the supply and demand for its housing. I took a drive on Sunday, and I went through every development that we have. We have ample amount of housing here in Zebulon, so the supply and demand is here. It's the key thing for me is affordable. That's the key thing. Now, if you said affordable, that's the key word. That's getting as far as my police, my firemen, my teachers, things of that nature, because we know the average median income here in Zebulon is only, what, $43,000? So these homes pretty much going to be priced out of range where we can't even have our police or fire live in our town. So that's my concern. So.
Any other questions or comments from Board of Commissioners?
I do think the change on the picture here, I like that. I think that does fit in with that community over there. And I think there is a need for them. And it would be nice to have something in the older parts of town.
This looks better.
Commissioner Baxter?
This looks better, I agree. I'd like to see their new renderings, please.
So I just have to introduce myself. So I'm Sherry Casey, Meridian Properties Group, address 4030 Wake Forest Road in Raleigh. So the packet that you have in front of you are the original sort of design that we put through that was in the packet. Do you need me to speak closer to it?
That's fine.
Okay. Is that better for everybody? Okay. So the original layout, that was part of the packet that was presented, and then another color option. So we kind of labeled those as 1A and 1B. And then we also have this more traditional look that, after speaking with many of the commissioners about this project, had explained that they would prefer something that looked a little more traditional and a little less modern. So we tried to accommodate that. But we are open to everybody's feedback. If you guys have something a little bit different that you're looking for, we're willing to try and accommodate that the best that we can.
Comments for Ms. Case?
Is there any difference between these two pages of the newer ones?
The one that's at the very back.
Oh, that's the back of it? So-
There was several, there's I think 5.
Oh, I see, the front load
pages.
townhomes and then the
Yes,
rear loaded
and then I
townhomes?
noted in the bottom corner about if it was option 1A or 1B or option 2. I know that when we had spoken with the board before, giving options was something that was appreciated and welcomed, and so we wanted to just kind of, off of the feedback that we had gotten from you guys, to put that.
Are the sides going to look the same?
For the more traditional option 2 layout?
Well, the option 2 layout doesn't have the sides.
No, I think they will look relatively similar, but we haven't had, our architect was not able to put that all together quickly. We had to kind of retool the whole front elevation, so we were trying to just at least get you what the exteriors would look like from the front.
I like option 2, but I like the differences, the different colors of the more modern ones. Is there a way that that can happen here so that they look more individualized like these do?
Yeah, I mean, you like the browns and the grays.
Yeah, instead of just monochromatic, so each single one looks very much the
We
same.
can definitely work on putting that together.
And I have a question about the tree that is really not in that great of shape. And if you guys get 15 minutes into construction and it turns out that that thing can't be saved or shouldn't be saved or is going to be dangerous and fall over or whatever, what's the plan? I'm assuming that you must have thoughts if the tree can't be saved as far as landscaping for that corner area.
We haven't thought that far ahead of what we would do if that tree wasn't there. I'm sure that would be something that we would discuss with the Parks and Rec or staff, but I don't know. Us having to take down that tree, if it's not healthy, I'm sure we would have to speak with the town to determine whether or not we could remove that tree since it is so large. So I would imagine we'd have to get some sort of health inspection of it before we could just go ahead and remove it.
Go back to that, please.
Yeah, it's our intent to keep the tree.
Intent.
And it is,
It's a beautiful
it's a beautiful
tree.
tree. It's very large, so we just feel like it would be a fantastic amenity to this neighborhood to be able to preserve that.
I don't disagree. I'm all about preserving trees. I just would like to know that there is an action plan in place if you get into construction and you find that this, for whatever reason, this tree should come down.
Okay.
You're gonna run into possibly roots that's been for a while too.
Yeah.
Mike, do you have any? I guess we can talk about that when the time comes, but I don't really know how to put together a plan right now for that for you, but we can look into it.
Well, it's just something that I would like to feel comfortable that the owners in this complex are not going to be, I guess, burdened with tree removal if right after everything sells, the tree has to come down. So maybe just some kind of diagnostic from an arborist.
House.
Also, I think on your plans, you talked about a greenway, like a 10-foot greenway. Can you kind of elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So along Gannon Avenue, it was requested that we do an extension to the proposed greenway that would run in front of that property going to downtown. And so we are totally fine with that. We understand that with rezoning from O&I to DTP, that higher pedestrian access is important. And we've really tried to meet that with the intent of our project by having the majority of our units, the front doors fronting onto Rotary and Gannon to make this a more pedestrian-friendly neighborhood. So along Gannon Avenue, it's going to be a wider sidewalk of 10 feet wide. So yes, along the front of our property on Gannon, it would be a 10-foot wide greenway, pedestrian greenway. That would tie in with a future extension with future town of Zebulon plans.
Yeah, I see the looks over here. That is actually a component of what's known as the Green Spine, which would connect Little River Park all the way to 5 County Stadium going through the core of downtown.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board, commissioners? Hearing none. Now we will have questions or comments from the planning board. Dave?
All right, sorry, I'm chomping at the bit here. I've got a bunch of questions, so please bear with me. First, just a general statement. When we were looking at those options, both Dominic and I even agreed that I like this, but I like the stone versus the brick. I thought the stone looked
this option here?
On this option here, we like basically the roof, as Shannon had, or Commissioner Baxter had mentioned, the individualizing of the different units, but also the stone instead of a brick. Does that make sense? I think it just brings more character.
Stone versus brick.
Yeah. So there's just a
Anyone
general
need
statement.
this?
They have
We're
theirs.
good. Yeah.
Okay.
So let me get on to my questions. So I apologize, guys. What types of trees for buffers are we talking about?
They would be native trees. We have a tree plan as part of our landscape plan.
Did I miss that? I missed it. I apologize.
I can show this to you. I mean, this is
Okay.
our landscape plan with the trees that are planned.
Okay.
It'd be the sheet that looks something like this.
Thank you. So the current zoning is O and I. And there's a single family house on one of those properties. Do you know why there's a single family house on that O and I? Was that zoning changed at some point from
That-
residential to O and I as a request from them, or?
I don't know if it was a request from them, but there was a compatible zoning district in the old zoning code, and then that carried over into the new Unified Development Ordinance.
Okay. So we don't really know the intent of what that zoning was there for, other than to buffer from the commercial to the residential?
Correct.
Okay.
But yeah, the zoning for these two parcels were carried over from comparable zoning district in the old zoning code.
Okay. Have we talked about public service, public works services, i.e. trash pickup, leaf pickup, things like that? Is that being done on Rotary? They have to pull their stuff around to Rotary? Are they expected to drive in there to do any utility services?
Yeah, they'll pull it up to Rotary, and it'll be identical operations as the parcel across the street from Rotary. That is also a multifamily residential use where they bring the carts up to Rotary.
Okay. So are any of these going to be ADA compliant? How is that going to work if the garage is on the ground floor?
As far as with an elevator, these are not intended to be serviced with an elevator.
Somebody that's disabled that can't climb stairs is out?
No, I wouldn't say that. We do intend to have some sort of office or bedroom on the first floor as well, so that could be an option.
You mean on the same level as the garage? Or on the next level up?
On the same level as the garage.
Okay. Was this submitted prior to the utility allocation plan?
Yes, but with permit of choice, if they're going to be taking advantage of the recent text amendment, the utility allocation policy would apply. And we've already talked to the applicant, and they're going to be providing calculations to staff.
We don't have those yet then?
Just based on just a rough review after we spoke this afternoon, it was determined, and I mean like very rough review, we were able to get to 40 pretty quick.
Okay. Again, we spoke this afternoon, so I want to let everybody know the Parks and Rec impact fee, these are considered single-family homes, so the single-family.
Condoized, it'd be independent dwelling units because they'd be independent parcels of record for the actual living structure.
Okay. And Commissioner Miles, I think, touched on this with the preservation Zebulon. So it's in close proximity. How is that going to affect that district? give us any idea of how that could possibly impact that historical district?
It won't. The historic district is a national historic district. And in terms of a regulatory context, the only limitation is when federal funds are being utilized, where you cannot utilize federal funds to negatively impact historic resources. When you do, there's a process that you have to follow. In this context, there are no historic resources on the site, and even the nearby adjacent uses are still residential in nature. There's several infill developments, so it's not grossly out of character for the development or for the location which is being placed.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily worried about the fees and such. As far as I'm driving through Zebulon, I see these nice, beautiful historic homes, and wow, what's that weird, more modern structure that's kind of right next door. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and if you look
to me, it seems like it might be a little out of character with what the surrounding properties look like, minus the one that's adjacent, and I get that. So it's just, I guess, more of a statement than anything.
Yeah, and that's not unusual for local, state, or national historic districts.
And then my final question, so please bear with me. Part of the meetings that you had with the neighborhood, there were questions about, being condos or rental or things like that. My question, I understand the intent was to be condos. Are we intending to for these to be affordable housing? Or are we constructing, $500,000 condos that is really going to segment the options for people wanting to move to Zebulon?
We don't intend them to be like high-priced homes in that way that you're speaking. If you want to quantify it by 500 plus, we don't intend it for them to be at that price. We haven't settled 100% on a sales price, but we intend them to be more on the affordable side and not to be starting in the 500s plus like that now.
That's all I have.
Anyone else from the planning board?
A couple.
Stephanie?
Yes, I have a question. It may be a silly question, but why isn't this area considered residential neighborhood? Why isn't it being zoned for that?
Because, are you asking why the applicant is not proposing to rezone it to residential?
Right.
The downtown periphery mixed use, the character and context of that is more in keeping with the applicant's intent versus the R4. Those were the only two real options in terms of the intent for a multifamily residential. Multifamily residential would not be permissible in the R4.
If I may, just to further answer your question on top of what Mike said, our intent is we are keeping the same type of product that we would do for O&I as we would do for this DTP product, which would be multifamily. We're not trying to increase our density or anything like that. The same density that would be allowed for this type of product in O&I would be the same density that we're asking for here. We're not trying to increase past that. And so we're just feeling like, our primary reason of why we're wanting to be able to rezone to DTP is to keep a more residential feel with the DTP versus the O&I, and it allows us to kind of take an advantage of utilizing the garage and the driveway space as our parking spaces, rather than having to have like a parking lot, which is what would be required in O&I. So we're trying to have it be more within that neighborhood feel, to try and keep cars off of being in a big parking lot and having them be more residential in a garage and a driveway.
Mr. Dominic?
Yeah. Several questions. Regarding the pedestrian feel, the walkability, the green space, how much space is going to be in front of the buildings that front Gannon Avenue? So in other words, are they going to walk right out their front door and be on that greenway, or is it?
That setback would be on that layout map that's this
Okay.
the land has here. I don't have the setback
Yeah.
off the top of my head. Are you able to read it?
So I guess it was just trying to determine how much actual neighborhood feel, like would people be out sitting on their front porch, or is there not really enough room for that? And there doesn't seem to be front.
On Gannon?
On either one, Gannon is, there's only 2 buildings on Gannon, but that was because that's where the 10-foot greenway was. That was more of my question.
It looks like the setback that's required is 5 foot. So it'll be whatever those walkways are. There aren't really any porches to sit on.
Right.
It's mostly just front doors that lead onto a pedestrian walkway right onto the sidewalks that we would install. It would be more of them utilizing the open space and the green space that's provided.
In terms of the road, Gannon Avenue specifically, I know somewhere in the material we were given, currently that whole stretch is basically 3 lanes, 2 lanes with a middle turning lane. And the future plan was for it to be a 4-lane median divided road up to Rotary, converting to a 2-lane median divided roadway to kind of slow down traffic coming into downtown. But I noted that the plans now say there's going to be like a 3-lane roadway, which is what's theirs now. So is there going to be a median, or is it just going to be just what it is right now?
I'll answer that one. Within our transportation plan, it calls for site-specific considerations, and part of the rationale behind that spur being indicated as a 4-lane between MacTod and Rotary was intended for it to be a transition period where it's going to be reducing down. Rotary will not, if it was a full 4-lane median divided or 4-lane with a middle turn lane, those vehicles really wouldn't have anywhere else to go once those lanes dropped off other than Rotary. And Rotary is not designed to be able to accommodate that traffic. So the transition point really starts at MacTod and ends at Rotary.
And that will be what it is currently, basically?
Essentially, yes, for that component.
With a median or with no median?
In this context, there would not be a median because of the turn lanes going into the adjacent businesses.
Okay, that's what I was trying
Yep,
to.
as well as the adjacent residential home.
Gotcha.
Any other questions from the planning board?
Yes, my question is, and this is more logistics and might be getting in the weeds, but I think it's something that we need to identify. Whether these are condos or rentals has implications on the site plan and the building code and whether or not the infrastructure can support these. So my concern is that if we're going back and forth between these are going to be rentals or condos, if they're rentals, do we have the adequate fire sprinkler ability? Do we have the capacity to supply these units? If they're condos, where are the air handler units going to go? Where are the condensing units going to be on site? How are we going to screen those? If they're rentals, we can combine those and make a utility yard. But if they're condos, now each one has to have their own condensing unit on their own parcel. Now we got to start looking at logistics for that. So those are just things that, I don't see the development of how that's going to happen at this point, and that's something that I would like to see. And I think that's something that needs to be determined during this phase so that we're all on the same page moving forward. We don't get surprised by one way or the other. I will say that I do enjoy the option 2 elevations. They more are in line with what this town is. Looking at the materiality and the forms are not all that undifferent from some of the historical homes that are down the road, using the brick and the board and batten siding. Things like that do fit in the neighborhoods nearby. So I am pleased by that versus the more modern approach that you guys presented first. So I think that's something that I would like to see is just what are these going to be? Are these going to be rentals or are these going to be condos?
So our intent for these are not that they're rentals first. This project is not meant to be put forth as a rental. This is meant to be for home ownership. Saying that though, if somebody purchases as a residential ownership property and then they want to go ahead and rent that space, that home out, we're not right now putting any limits on that. But this is not meant to be a rental community, it's not like apartments or
So there's no
rental homes like that. So this would be intent to be the people who live there own the property.
So it's not a management company, is what
No.
you're saying? Okay.
No,
Okay.
there will be an HOA management
Yep.
company, but not in the term of a rental management company like that. That's not what this is meant to be at all.
Okay.
These are meant to be for people to own these homes and live there. As far as the air conditioners, the HVACs, the condensers, we're open to that. However, the builder ends up putting that together. We're obviously very open to the feedback from staff and planning. When we drove by the townhomes that are on Vance Street, I believe those units are in the front. So you can see them from the street and they're not screened. I'm not saying that's what we would do or what we would want to do, but that's how that was handled for that project here in town. So, I wouldn't say that we need to have one particular location, where they're all together in one unit because they're not meant to be rentals. They would all have their own unit that's to each of their homes.
I will say that the units on Vance Street were initially submitted before the adoption of the Unified Development Ordinance. New regulations prohibit the condensers and other mechanical equipment to be located in the front. They would have to be located in the side or the back and have to be fully screened.
Ms. Jenkins?
The parking, is there any additional space for guest parking other than the driveway if they pull into it?
Right now, it would be the single car garage for each unit and room for likely just a single car in each of the driveways. The driveway into the community would be a driveway, not necessarily like a DOT road per se. It'd be more like a driveway for the neighborhood. So to answer your question, no, there isn't any additional parking beyond what is indicated for the driveway and the garage.
So if I came to visit, I wouldn't have anywhere to park if they had a car in the drive.
There will be some spots for the mail kiosk, whatever is going to be required for the postmaster, the post office would require us to have there. There may be some on that cul-de-sac, parking on the side, not blocking driveways. There may be one or two spaces that would be available for that, but it's not going to be formally called out as a guest parking space.
So that little area that's butting out, is that for mail? Is that what that is as you enter?
In the bottom part of the photo?
Yeah, that little part.
That's the
here.
mail kiosk, yes ma'am.
Mhm. Thank you.
Mr. Lowry?
So we're talking about expanding our downtown mixed use. What's to stop that from spreading, is the lack of a better word. We're dangerously close to saying now our downtown periphery is expanding to Sycamore. We're putting in close proximity to some of these other residential neighborhoods, and now those developers can say, well, now I can sell my property and do a mixed use and make all kinds of money. So I guess my question is, what's to stop this from spreading to, say, Sycamore and losing our character of a downtown and a downtown periphery core?
Yeah, it goes back to the standard specifically as it relates to being in the right location. There'd be greater hesitation if this was zoned R4 or a lower density residential as opposed to an office and institutional zoning classification. The two zoning classifications are fairly similar in nature in terms of spirit and intent, including allowing for multifamily residential in the office and institutional, but the design regulations are substantially different and would be more in keeping with, would not be in keeping with a residential district. So the answer to that question is really going to be site-specific and dependent upon the context of what's there currently and what would result in the change being applied.
Anyone else from the planning board? Anyone else from the board? Commissioner Baxter?
So I think the very least for the buildings that are going to be visible from Gannon, the sides, like, this is not, that this doesn't say older home to me, and so if there's something that can be done with this to make it look more congruous to option 2, that would be very much appreciated.
Yes, we can work with our architect on that. Like I mentioned before, after our meetings, we were trying to get into their calendar to have something to prepare to show you and get your feedback on that. But yes, we can work on having those side views are for our option 1, so we'll work on getting something for option 2.
And I understand that you are under time constraints. I just want to make sure that I say it publicly that is something that I would like to see.
No, thank you. Thank you for the feedback and thank you for letting us know.
Question? I'm sorry. Excuse me. What type of lighting will be in the parking areas, and how will it impact the surrounding neighborhoods?
I don't have an answer specifically about what type of, I mean, I assume that there would be some street lights that would be required, but I have not worked with our engineer to specifically plot where those would be. I don't have a location for those specifically.
Very specific standards as it relates to lighting adjacent to residential neighborhoods. Essentially, it has to have a 0 cutoff, so it does not result in any light trespass onto the neighboring residential parcels. And they do show a couple lights located here adjacent to the mailbox kiosk, as well as in the back area here. Those are the 2 site lights that were indicated. And they do have to be at a full 90 degree. They can't be pitched.
Miles?
In speaking to a lot of the residents in that area, they were trying to figure out why you guys are like opposed a fence for a buffer. Is there a reason, rationale behind that?
I'm sorry, why we are opposed to that?
Correct. The citizens in that area, everyone I talked to in that area, they wanted a fence. So I'm just trying to figure out what is that opposite.
So that was discussed at our neighborhood meeting. One of the neighbors did bring that up. And we did explain that we would be open to that option. Ideally, we feel like doing landscaping or increasing landscaping would be a more attractive option. But if we explain to the neighbor who brought that up that they were interested in that, that would be something that we would work to do. We're not closed off to that at all. So if that's something that is definitely wanted, we would be fine with that.
It wasn't just one citizen, it was a series of citizens in that area. So just
Okay, good to know.
Thank you.
But we are not opposed to that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the Board of Commissioners?
I have one question for Mike. Have we spoken to a Rotary Club representative in that area? Because it sounds as if the Rotary Club's going to be that parking lot to walk across. And just, have we talked to someone, kind of point of contact at the Rotary Club there?
No, but could you expand upon the comment about the parking lot would be?
I'm saying that they're going to be limited on parking. Say they have a Christmas party, cookout, birthday party, they're going to have somewhere to park. They're not going to park in the neighbor's driveway. Just trying to ensure that the Rotary Club is aware. It sounds as if, I'm assuming, that that parking lot will be where they park at and walk across.
Could nobody from the Rotary Club has contacted the town?
Thank you.
Mr. Lowry?
So the amenities that are being presented for this property are just open space. Has anything else been considered, say, a gazebo or something? I do recall a smaller property that was approved last year with less units that we at least had a gazebo going in.
So our proposal is, we are required to have a minimum of 10% open space for our project. 50% of that has to be urban open space. And so our intent was around that tree in that corner area, we would do something like benches or a gathering area. A gazebo was brought up, something like that. Which would also be perfect because it's along Gannon where the Greenway extension would be, where that 10-foot wide Greenway walkway would be. So our intent was that would be where we would put our amenity, so to speak, to also be able to qualify for our urban open space requirement. So some sort of gathering area, benches and seating and things like that.
And if they have young children that come to visit or live there, where are they supposed to play?
I would advise in the open space areas that are indicated.
Along Gannon Avenue?
There's also the open space between the duplex and the triplex area.
Yeah, I mean, I see that. It's very limiting, is all it's a statement, it's not really a question, so.
Okay, thank you.
Was there any, I'm sorry, going back to the actual look of the units themselves, me personally, I don't object necessarily to the modern look, but it does kind of, I can see where people would be like, that's kind of a jarring change. However, having said that, most of the buildings right in downtown, commercial buildings, are sort of that tall, flat roof, which is similar to the proposal, not this one, but the first one. Is there any way to take that proposal and just tie in a few architectural elements to make it look like the buildings downtown? In other words, preserve the modern look? I don't know if you can pull that.
I can pull it up.
Something like that or very similar to that, but add, look at the actual buildings, and I'm not familiar with the architectural terms. I think corbels might be one of them, or pediments. Something that would just kind of utilize the modern, because that modern style is very popular right now from just a real estate perspective, but it also does look not like anything else that's downtown. If there was a way to, if you like that style and you think that's the most saleable, but you could also tie in some architectural element from some of the buildings downtown.
Okay. I mean, we're open to that.
Okay, I didn't know.
We're open to that, and we can try and have another conversation, possibly with planning and the board to determine exactly what mixture. I think
Like
I think there's two schools of thought, and so we're just trying to piece together what exactly is best for Zebulon and what everybody really likes to see. And so all we can say right now is we are open to changes and working with you guys.
And I would just, as a comment, echo what Commissioner Baxter said. That was one of my thoughts that I had jotted down. Those side elevations, especially since that's what you're going to see coming down Gannon, which is the main thoroughfare. It's just like a blank wall staring in the face. I was wondering if there's any way to dress that up.
We can definitely talk with our architect about doing something to improve the side views of those units, yes.
Mr. Germano?
Going back to the site plan, Mike, if you could flick back to that. It's showing the stormwater retention inside of the kiosk, or the mail kiosk inside of the stormwater retention. I don't even know, I mean, can we do that? I don't know what the limitations are during the technical review committee. Will you guys address that?
Yes.
Okay. I just don't, because we're running out of square footage to be able to hold all that rainwater.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to handle stormwater mitigation, and those are all components that are going to be reviewed as part of the construction drawing review for the technical review committee.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to bring that up.
Comments, questions?
Yeah, I'm going to continue on. So when you start looking at the street lighting, as part of our town standards, would these street lighting fixtures be more in line with what the downtown is, or would these be more in line with like Weaver's Pond and Tarrant Lakes type of fixtures?
Being that these are not on the street, it creates more options for the applicant. However, the specifications in terms of light trespass will have to apply regardless of the light style that's the approach. If they're being located in the public right-of-way, they'd be more in keeping with what you see in downtown, which is also what's being applied in all the newer neighborhoods.
Yeah, okay. Very good.
Ms. Jenkins?
Yes, looking at the layout, the more and more I look at it, it just seems like it's so congested. How many bedrooms are you looking at for these units?
These
For
would
each?
be approximately 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath.
Okay, because I'm just thinking about my household. We have 4 people and there are 4 cars. So parking again, and then the emergency vehicles coming in and out, it just seems so congested. Where would people park? It's not friendly. It's not inviting. I wouldn't want to come visit. I don't know if that's what we are looking for here in Zebulon. We want it to be where people can come, visit their family, have a place to park. I mean, you know, emergencies come about, if the trucks or, you know, the cars can get through freely. Seems like it's stacked. Everybody's stacked in.
If I may say something, Mayor.
Oh, I'm done.
Done. Commissioner Miles?
I just wanted to kind of remember what Stephanie's saying. You do know, I just want her to know, we're working with less than an acre of land there, basically. So you're really stacking them in there. So just to know what you're saying. That's all.
As I said before, I just want to at least just say, I understand, I apologize for cutting you off. I understand that it's just under an acre of land, but we're still within the same density as what it currently is zoned at. And so we're not asking for additional units or density beyond what is currently allowed in this current zoning.
But you are asking us to go up higher, though, correct? Go to what you are asking for height variations, currently what we have.
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
But allowing the going up in height allows to be able to have a garage so that you can put some of those cars away off of the street, out of the view, rather than having them all just out in a parking lot, essentially. It allows to be able to have more of a traditional feeling home. When you come in, you can put your car in a garage, rather than having just all of those cars just out in a parking lot.
I know a lot of people do use their garages for storage. Is there an area for storage here in these units?
beyond the internal storage that's available, I mean, there will be some, I mean, as far as the dimensions of the garage, there will be some availability, maybe some overhead storage. There probably will not be a ton of floor place storage inside of the garage.
There's another hiccup for me. No storage space.
Mr. Lowry?
It sounds like y'all are very open to listening to what we have to say as far as changing your plans and so forth. Is there a potential interest to, say, go down to 10 units and make one of those units a parking space or visitor parking or something along those lines?
We're not saying we're against it, but realistically, if you take one unit away, how many spots are you really going to get out of a 20 by 35? I mean, are you going to get an additional parking spot per unit? I mean, I understand that this conversation is about parking, so that's why I asked that question. Is, you know, I think you have to have a 9 by 18 foot space, I believe, for parking. So I think you're going to get maybe 3 to 3.5, 4 spots, possibly. I mean, we could maybe look at something more creative, like we add more spots to where the mail kiosk is going to be. But we can look into that as an option. I'm open to the feedback, and we can talk about it as a team and with our architect and our engineer for sure.
And so all of these are going to be 20 feet wide? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're all going to be the same width?
Yes.
Are they going to all be the same floor plan?
No, the end units will probably be a little bit different just because of the nature of them being an end unit, having more windows, so the layout will be slightly different. They'll be generally a similar layout though, yes.
You may or may not know this, but Rotary, we do allow parking on both sides of that street currently, do we not?
It's not marked parking, so I can't say definitively if we do or do not. I wanted,
Yeah, I don't even recall ever seeing a car parked on Rotary near that intersection in 39 years.
I can speak briefly to both Commissioner Miles and your comment. I went down there today just to walk the site myself, and I wasn't sure that I could park on Rotary, so I actually parked in the Rotary Club parking lot. So that's where people are going to be.
That's what they're going to do. It's literally, that's what they're going to do. It's going to be that. So.
She had a
Ms. Johnson, Dr. Johnson?
I wanted to know, how did you come up with 11 units in the beginning?
Because the site is 0.99 acres and the allowed density is 12 units per acre. So because it's not a full acre and we get 12 units per acre, we strive to make it as 11 since that was what was available.
Okay,
So that's where 11 came from.
Okay.
Because that was the allowable density based on the size of the parcel.
So there was no consideration for any amenities?
No, from the beginning, we intended that we wanted to do something around that tree. We wanted to keep the tree. That was our amenity. Yes.
That's my question.
when you're, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm finished.
When you go back and look at your planning, is there any way you can look at for area for storage?
For like exterior storage?
Wherever,
Can I ask what kind of storage you're asking about?
Well, just somewhere you can put some extra boxes and things that you have, because for me, you know, when you're moving into a home, you need to be able to store things, your Christmas tree, just random items that you may have.
Well, there is going to be available space inside the home. there will be closets and there will be space inside the house that you'll be able to store things. And it's not to say that people can't have some sort of storage ability within their garage as well. As far as exterior outside storage, I don't know. That is not something that we thought about, but we can definitely look into it. I don't know if I can call on you. I think the mayor has to recognize you, but.
I'm done.
Mr. Lowry?
So when I asked about the ADA, you had mentioned something about offices or something on that ground floor with the garage. And so is that gone now? I mean, I guess that could be used as storage if there's enough space to put something on the ground floor with the garage that you had mentioned when I talked about the ADA access. So I guess I'm confused.
Yeah, so there is downstairs that will be a room. It could be a flex room, it could be a bedroom. So it could be something that you use as an office. You could use it as storage. You could use it as a bedroom space if you want that third bedroom to be your bedroom space. So there is that option that it can be a flexible room for you to store things that you need, or to use as a bedroom, or to use as an office, or a playroom, or whatever else you may. Any homeowner would want to use that first floor bedroom. But it is relatively common, at least in my view, that first floor in a townhome would have some sort of bedroom or flex space on that first floor.
So, talking about the actual layout itself, and just to give you full disclosure, I've been a real estate agent, so I've shown numerous townhomes. So typically, I know what you're talking about. You go in through the garage, and there is a good-sized room that is flex space, office space. A lot of builders give it an option to be a bedroom with a bathroom. And that's what you're talking about here?
Yes.
Okay. So my next question would be, most of those style townhomes that I've looked at, if you come in through the garage, then obviously you have to go upstairs to get to the main living level, and then the bedrooms are on the third level of the building, the second living level, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
But then the front elevation on those type of units, you usually have to go up steps to get to the main living level from the outside. In other words, if you come in from the back through the garage, you're on the ground floor, and you go upstairs inside to get to the main living. But on the front elevation, because you're not accessing the garage from the front, you have to go up steps to get to the main living level. And this doesn't, where are you going to go when you go in the front door, I guess is my question.
On the ones that face Gannon, or the ones that face exterior, or the ones that are internal?
Ones, so whichever.
The front load or the rear load, I suppose?
The rear load. So on the rear load, if you're looking at the front of the building, the front door is still on the garage level. So when you walk in the front door, where are you going to be walking into?
I don't have the exact layouts in front of me, I apologize. It's probably, it'll be a different, it'll probably speak to your previous question where, there'll be different layouts. They're not gonna be all identical. So there may be some sort of, I'm sure there'll be a mudroom or something like that. But off the top of my head, I don't recall exactly how the configuration is when you walk in.
And I guess my question is partly based on the answer to your previous question. So if you looked at the units from above, and it has a rear load garage, and if we're looking at it from the top down at the garage level, if you come in with your car through the rear into the garage.
How do you get upstairs?
How do you get upstairs? Number one, there's got to be a stairway. Number two, if you do have that extra room, which is very common, that would be in front of the garage. So if you're walking in from the street side in that front door, are you walking into that extra room, I guess is my question.
I can pull up the exact plans so that I can speak exactly to what you're asking, because I don't want to tell you the wrong.
Yeah, and if you were walking into that space from the front, you wouldn't want your front door walking into a bedroom necessarily. I'm just trying to figure out how it's
I
going
can
to be.
kind of
Go ahead.
relate to that. We have a similar design that we're working on currently that is essentially a 3-story, 2-car garage, front-loaded and rear-loaded. Essentially what you do is you walk in, you have a foyer. The garage is probably 18 feet wide in that house, and then that lot's 35 feet deep, right? So you could walk in to the right and then get into the house. So these ones that are double loaded, you're gonna start looking at, okay, now you're gonna get a very narrow hallway between the edge of the garage and the building.
Okay.
So in a single car garage, you're looking at something that's probably 10 feet wide, right? So now you have 10 feet of hallway or room or whatever to get into the space. So you're gonna have a gathering point that'll then bring you to your choices of stair, bedroom, garage. That's typically how we would design something like that.
I didn't know if there was enough room for that in a 20-foot wide project.
Yeah.
There is, with those single car garage.
What he's describing is
Yeah.
basically the layout of the internal, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually on these style, I've seen on the front elevation, there's a stairway going up to, an exterior stairway going up to the main level.
There are no exterior stairs like that.
Yeah.
No, there'll be internal stairs.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions, comments from either board? Thank you. Now we will, anyone that is in favor, that wishes to come up and speak, come up to the podium. Okay.
Thank you.
Any write-in in favor?
No, sir.
Hold on one second. My understanding there was a citizen I spoke that sent an email in to you guys.
But
So-
that's just in favor.
Okay, paper, gotcha. Yes, thank you.
So, hearing none in favor, no emails, no write-ins. Anyone wishes to speak in opposition, come to the podium. Come to, name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Davis. My address is 209 West Gannon Avenue. I live pretty much a little bit down the street from this project that you all are discussing. My home is probably one of the oldest historic homes in Zebulon. And so I have great concern of this project. I have concern with something that does not represent the historic district, something that's very modernized, something that will just congest the entire already congested street. I have great concerns in that particular area. I don't know how this will bring any sort of value to an historic district, which we take great pride in seeing it as that and to remain as that. So the whole factor of building something and now the front door is not even facing Gannon Avenue, so as you drive down the street, which we as an entire neighborhood put great effort into just keeping the image of what we want this entire town to represent. Now you throw this here inside of the neighborhood, basically says to a lot of us, what do we do next? Where do we go when we are working as hard to stay as historic homes on this entire block? And you're not sure whether you're putting rental homes, if you're putting condos up, if you're putting a modernized look. I just think I oppose it. I oppose it because at the end of the day, it's down the street from me. It's literally down the street from me. And so here I am, I'm moving to Zebulon, to a historic district, and I worked hard to go after a historic home, to now be told that you're building a building that is 1 year old next to my house that is built in 1901. So what's the purpose of calling it and considering it a historic district if you're opening it up the entire neighborhood, or at least Gannon Avenue, to everything else to come inside the community? What's to, like as someone said here, what's to open up everyone else? If you're gonna open it up, you're gonna open it up widely. And I have concerns with that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And your address?
Hello, everyone. My name is Leslie Moss Gatson. I live at 405 West Gannon, right next door to 401. I moved here from New Jersey 6 months ago. And had I thought or knew that a building, that's pretty much what it is, a building was going to go up this quick where I'm living at, I probably would have never moved to Zebulon. And Zebulon, I was sold on Zebulon when my realtor showed me the house and how beautiful it was. And that's what made me want to just pack my whole entire family and move down to Zebulon. And this is our first time ever being out of New Jersey. So it was a big deal for me to do that, for us to do that, for me to bring my family here. And then my mom just got here. So, you know, to have people call and say, how is it down there? I said, it's just beautiful down here. But it upsets me because I'm going to be looking at 3 stories next to me. And I don't want that. Like, there's an adjacent complex, I guess you can call it, which is across the street. It's beautiful. 1 story is perfect. But to have such a high rise, I moved away from that, and to be put back into that, it kind of disturbs me. So I am opposed to this. Thank you.
Thank you. State your name and your address.
Good evening. My name's Ethan Sprague. I live at 301 Rotary Drive, which is the property on the backside. I moved to Zebulon 3.5, 4 years ago because it was the only place where I could buy an acre of land in town and have a nice house and have space for my 2 kids to run around. I have a 5-year-old boy and a 10-year-old boy. And they can run around the yard because it's safe. And we moved here because of the space. And you're telling me next door you're going to cram as much as you possibly can onto that lot. It doesn't fit. I'm sorry. It just doesn't fit in this town. I don't want to live next to 3-story townhouses. That's where I moved here from, like she said. I moved here to get away from that. What do we want Zebulon to become, you know? If you all want to build it up, go ahead, but I'll be gone. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'd like to sympathize with the neighbors over here who've expressed their concerns of what's going to happen with them.
State your name and address, please.
Oh, I apologize, sir. Dr. Donald Cronin. I want to say I sympathize with the neighbors. I don't live near it, and it would not affect me personally. But I guess one of my biggest concerns is that this is serious business. The commissioners have all been called here. The planning commission is called here. Neighbors are here. They're concerned. And I appreciate that people have plans and they want to do something with it, but I heard a lot of blank checks. I didn't hear specifics. I heard about we're not sure what's going to happen to the property, who will own it, who won't own it, what limitations will be done with it. And we are saying this the same day that cryptocurrency has just completely dropped because it's been another blank check. I think before anybody comes before this commission and anybody comes up and starts saying what's going to happen to our town, we need specifics because this is our community. And I think everybody has a right to move in the community, better it, but I think they have to prove they're going to better it, not just simply show up and say, I think I can. That worked for the little train, that could. It's not going to work for Zebulon.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? Anyone for or against? Anyone for neither?
I've got comments to read in opposition, Mayor.
Okay.
This is David A. Martin. I reside at 324 West Gannon, Zebulon, North Carolina. I have been purchasing real estate in 5 counties around the Triad for the last 20 years. I have spent a considerable amount of money on restoring the property at 324 West Gannon, which was the old Whitley house. The street is historical and needs to remain this way, as any under par construction will only degrade the street appearance. Here are my comments for 401 West Gannon Avenue. I do not agree with the new zoning request per the following reasons. There are too many units, one house with one garage, which totals 12 on 1 acre of land in a residential area. The way that the units are located on the property and an entrance on a side street will cause most of the houses' backyard to be seen by the main streets. There will be absolutely no curb appeal seeing houses from the backyard. I do not agree with any shrubs being planted as a barrier to any property. If they are not maintained properly, then they will make the property curb appeal worse. I do not have any wood fence as a barrier to an adjacent property, as they need yearly maintenance and wood fences have no appeal. If this is by any way allowed, then there must be strict guidelines in a HOA and require that no street parking is allowed and all property must be properly maintained by an HOA. Plus include, of course, all of the restrictions of a normal HOA. If allowed, then by no way should anything be built unless each unit has a property value of at least $500,000. I am told that each unit would be about $325,000, which brings us to the bottom of any market in Wake County. These units must have a luxury appeal that is historical in nature, not first-time buyer appeal. No units should be allowed to have vinyl siding. All units should be constructed using brick on all 4 sides, including the garage. Vinyl siding is used on starter homes. Any subdivision that has backyards facing the street have constructed a wall with beautiful landscaping, as I have attached as an example, and I've got pictures. There are many more examples, but the intent is to provide privacy for people living there and to improve the curb appeal, as houses with backyards facing the street have no appeal. My recommendation is to keep the current zoning and be careful what is approved, as it does not become an eyesore. All the historical homes, which I invite anyone to drive by my house, 324 West Gannon, as an example, in keeping with the historical setting. I did not put money in this house for profit. I did it because it was a house worth restoring due to its history, and everyone I know that drives by the property loves it. Will you get the same reception for a property that is clustered with vinyl houses, 12 on 1 acre? Roofs must have at least architectural shingles and number 3 tabs, as these are on starter homes. Zebulon is an upcoming area in Wake County due to how close it is to Raleigh's inner city, so please do not make one of the main streets cluttered with townhomes and lose their historical feel. I would recommend keeping the zoning as is and keeping in mind that anything constructed, either residential or commercial, must fit in with the historical setting that the street offers, at least up to the roundabout. Please acknowledge that you've received this and it will be read into the record. Thanks. David A. Martin.
Another one?
Not against. It's a separate comment.
Anyone else? Hearing none?
This one is neutral.
Okay.
My name is Stuart Sprague, owner of the adjoining property at 301 West Rotary Drive. The property is occupied by my son Ethan and his family. I request that a condition of granting the zoning change that provisions are made for a fence between the 2 properties as follows. Fence is to be a privacy fence of at least 6 foot and be constructed of wood or equivalent materials, and that the fence be installed prior to construction. Further, the owner of 401 West Gannon Street is to provide maintenance of the fence as needed in the future. The reason for this request is that the property has on occasion been used as a shortcut to Rotary Drive, and beyond which results in strangers crossing the property where my son and his family live. I expect that the addition of paving, etc., will only make this condition worse. My son's family includes 2 young boys. For their safety, I believe a privacy fence is necessary. Thank you for your consideration of this request. Stuart Sprague.
Any more, neither or against?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from either board? Comments?
Question. This handout that we were just given, what exactly is it?
From David Martin.
So he's looking at, if we were to approve, this is the type of fence that he's wanting to consider to put there.
So he's wanting like a fence he's wanting?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Stone, or is it brick, or is it vinyl? I can't even tell.
I think a combination looks like.
Used to be a stucco-coated cinder block.
Okay. And that was from the gentleman who wants a fence, or that was from David Markham?
David Martin.
Any other questions, comments from either board? Hearing none. If there's no one else to speak, we'll close the public hearing and refer this matter to the planning board for consideration. Do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Adjourn.